The concept of Tibet independence is a continuation of imperialist politics, but was imported from foreign countries following their imperialist aggression against China. Western countries chose to weaponize human rights to undermine the international image. It brought false concepts such as Tibet has the right to seek independence into the minds of some Tibetans. China challenges not only the world's power structure, but also the ideological structure dominated by the West. They were afraid that China would break the international rules and interests they had established. So they tried to use every opportunity to contain China. The Tibet issue became a geopolitical tool to disrupt China's national security and to make the multi-ethnic China split.
In 1951, tension between China and Tibet came to a head, resulting in Tibet's annexation by Mao Zedong and the CCP. In an effort to justify their advance on Tibet, the CCP emphasized the shared history between Tibetans and the Mongols of the Yuan dynasty. To China, the Mongol conquest of Tibet was historical evidence of China's claim on the region.
Well, fundamentally, the Chinese argument is that because the Tibetan people were once under the sway of the Mongolians, once the Mongols became part of the Chinese Empire, so too did the Tibetans.
In response to China's claims, Tibet asserted that the relationship between the Mongols and Tibet was strictly spiritual. The invasion had introduced Tibetan Buddhism to the Mongols, which altered the lifestyles and customs of the nomadic empire. The Mongols had become significant patrons of Tibetan arts, culture, and Buddhism, funding the construction of monasteries and the creation of Tibetan tankas and textiles. Even after the fall of the Yuan to the Ming, Mongolians continued to maintain a relationship with the Tibetan schools of Buddhism. To Tibet, the Mongols were not their Chinese rulers, but their Mongolian patrons.
The Tibetan response is simply because the Tibetans had formed an alliance with the Mongolians. That alliance then becomes null and void when the Mongolians are taken over by the Chinese, because the Mongolians are no longer in power.
So then Mongol time, Mongol power, Khan family, and they conquered all of Asia. And so particularly 15th century, Mongol Khan family called Altan Khan. Altan Khan invited third Dalai Lama to Mongolia. At the end of Dalai Lama convert them Buddhism. Bullet-loving Mongolians are now becoming peace-loving person. Mongols Altan Khan announced entire whatever he occupied nations are religion is Buddhism. And they announced that we're no longer doing animal worships, sacrifice. They're following the path of Lord Buddha.
The typical line you hear is that the Tibetans traded military protection for spiritual education.
Mongolians serve as Tibetans are students to protect. Tibetans becoming their teacher, spiritual teacher. Tibetans taught them.
A lot of historians believe that that's not quite accurate, but that's what you will often hear from some Tibetans.
On December 17, 1933, 13th Dalai Lama Thupten Gyatso passed away. It was up to his successor, a 19-year-old Tenzin Gyatso, to lead the young nation through the most perilous time in its history. With the victory of the Chinese Communist Party at the end of the Chinese Civil War in 1949, China turned to Tibet for its geopolitical position, which was crucial to developing Mao Zedong's vision for China.
The real reason that Tibet matters so much to China now is because of its geopolitical orientation. Who controls Tibet has extraordinary access to water. 3 of the major rivers that flow down into Southeast Asia start in Tibet, and they provide water to approximately 1 billion people. If you control Tibet, you have access to India. You have access, to all of the stands around there. You have access to Mongolia. It is a place of extraordinary geopolitical importance. If you control Tibet, you control a large part of that section of the globe, and it's why India is so intensely involved with China now. Just between China and India now are the Himalayan mountains, basically. It's a question of geopolitical power. So the Tibetans are the Tibetans. And the Tibetans will also argue that even when they had an alliance with the Mongolians, they were still Tibetan.
Although Western countries are always playing the Tibet card, they cannot change the fact that Tibet is part of China, neither can they stop China's development. They will only hurt themselves by their own doing.